Okay, people, it is the next day. What is it? July 3rd, 2022. As you could see from the previous video, we were at birthday celebrations yesterday. Okay. Well, for whatever reason, this morning, when I went to go check on Amari, he was having a seizure. Now keep in mind, people, this is the first time he's ever had a seizure. Okay? I'm trying to have a heart of steel, but I'm feeling very, 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 very lonely for him right now. One, because I'm worried, right? And I'm scared. Two, I just didn't know what it was, people. Because it wasn't like the last time I had to call 911. The only thing that's similar to this situation with the 911 is that he's constipated. Okay? But seizures don't seem to, I don't know. It was, okay, but I didn't know what it was, people. I've never seen anyone have a seizure before. So when I went to go check on him, because I was up with him at like 6:30 in the morning. Alright, changed him, gave him a bit of juice, he didn't want it. That camera moves on its own. Gave him a bit of juice, but he didn't want it. Just like he didn't really want the milk. In the later part of the evening, he only drank a bit of it. Gave him a good burp, right? Because, you know, I'm scared if I don't, he'll puke and aspirate it in, right? So I really go out of my way to sit him up, let him just, right? And I hold him so he can burp more than once. And because we were laying on the couch before all that, I said, okay, that's it. You're going now to go, you can go play on the bed, right? Because he'd been sleeping, so I didn't expect him to go to sleep, right? Because we had been sleeping. And he was fine. He was playing. Went to go check on him. He was fussing a bit because I had the hall light on, right? So anyway, I was fussing a bit, so I went to check on him. He was fine, so I turned on the light in the bedroom so he'd have more light, right? Because clearly he wasn't going to go to sleep, right? I gave him an option, right? Thought maybe he might, but he didn't, so he wanted the light on, so I turned on the light and checked on him, and he appeared to be fine. And then I went to go check on him again, and he was... I didn't know, people. I didn't know if he was suffocating or what the hell was going on. So, of course, I picked him up, tried to pat him. Clearly, he wasn't stopping. So the first thing I did was just run to phone and phone 911. And, of course, I got loud, so Andre woke up. And, you know, whoever answered the phone for 911 obviously had a heavy accent, so it's not like I could understand anything that they were saying. He'd ask me a question, and what question I did understand, I answered it, and then he'd ask me again because he himself couldn't understand what I was saying. So I just dropped the phone and ran to the front door and went outside because, you know, thinking that maybe the cooler air or whatever, right? Just whatever. Told Andre to go talk on the phone. And then my son heard me stressing out, patting on Amari's back, trying to get him to snap out of whatever he was doing, because I wasn't sure. Tried to look in his mouth and see if maybe he, right? Not that there would be anything for him to put in his mouth, but, you know, he is getting stronger, people. So I don't know, but there was nothing that I could tell. He just kept going like this. Oh my God. Oh my God. Ambulance came. They asked me what happened. I basically told them. They asked me what the pregnancy was like in terms of the pregnancy. And I told them, because they said, well, you know, did the mother do drugs? And I'm like, well, she did for the first couple months. There was drug use in there, but, you know, her pregnancy was normal, right? She had ultrasounds and, you know, but then there was that 5-day labor, where out of those 5 days, they sent her home 2 times, right? By the 4th day, she goes back. They drag out the labor. This is what I told the paramedic. They drag out the labor, and then his heartbeat drops, right? And then they rush her off for, and I said, botched C-section. And that paramedic got all defensive and tried to throw in that the mother was doing drugs. And I looked at him, I said, look, it was a C-section that created the birth injury of my grandson. Oh. And I'm like, whatever. So you see how it follows, people? Do you see how even the paramedics are casting judgment where they have no right to even put their 2 cents into it? Because that guy wasn't there, okay? So how the hell would he know anything other than he's trying to protect his co-workers? Okay. So clearly it became a pissing contest as to who was right when that wasn't even the frickin' issue. And this is why it needs to go to court, people. It needs to be dealt with in court. Otherwise, it will always be like this. Always. Even after Amari dies, if he should die, because of this, what's going on with him, with the cerebral palsy, and now he's having seizures, and, you know, he suffers from constipation chronically, it appears. Like, it doesn't take much. For all I know, it could have been that supplemental food that I gave him a while ago that just clogged him up, and everything just backed up in the meantime. Or maybe it was the lentils. Who knows? All I know is he was doing really good for a month and a half when I wasn't giving him anything. And I've been avoiding these supplemental Mylar food products to prevent constipation. To which, gets to the hospital, they give him a mild sedation and I guess a medication to help control the seizures. And they point out that he's constipated. But I already told the paramedics that he was constipated. I've been struggling with this for over a week, people. So much so that I've been doing freaking videos around it. Okay. You gotta have that heart of steel. Because if you don't have that heart of steel, you're not going to be able to cope with the criticism that comes in your direction in terms of, well, you know, any drugs or alcohol in the house? No. Right? What are you suggesting? Right? Like, why? Because you didn't like me saying that she may have suffered from a botched C-section and that's why my grandson is injured. You asked me my opinion. I told you. Right? Right? If there was problems with the pregnancy, don't you think I would have not known about that? outside of reading it in some medical file or trying to get that information from some random paramedic that just randomly shows up at my doorstep, that randomly wants to protect the healthcare system and their staff before they want to use critical thinking skills and think that maybe I, the caregiver of my grandson, has a point, being that I know the timeline, I know the history, I have the medical records to prove that timeline and that history, with common sense that if the heartbeat goes down and it doesn't come up and they're rushing in, how long does it take to book in an emergency C-section, people? I've been told 20 minutes. So for 20 minutes, my grandson's heartbeat was down from the time they decided that they were going to do an emergency C-section. He came out with signs, twitching, right? Jerking. They were monitoring him for the 3 days that he was in the hospital with those signs, doing blood sugar tests and all this other crap. They acknowledged in his medical files that he pooped in her womb because of the stress of his heartbeat going down. But they won't acknowledge that the injury of his brain occurred from all of that. Instead, they want to go with the default by saying, well, the mother did drugs when she was 2 months pregnant. As if she's the only one that ever freaking does any kind of drug in all of the people in the planet. Do you know how many people do drugs when they're pregnant? Never mind through the duration of their whole pregnancy, for crying out loud, people. And those people don't come out with cerebral palsy. Those children don't come out with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a direct result of lack of oxygen to the brain, people. If there was a problem before her pregnancy, with her pregnancy, I would have heard about it. Tisha would have heard about it. Paige would have heard about it. Everybody would have heard about it. In terms of complications. She had no complications when she was pregnant. The complications came at the time of her labor that was dragged out over a period of 5 days, with my opinion of negligent hospital staff sending her home 2 days out of 4 days, and then they dragged it out to the very bitter end until his heartbeat dropped and stayed down. Then they booked in the C-section. And then he came out. And then they tried to blame the mother because she answered their questions honestly. And they used it against her. And it's like that beehive mentality where I get random paramedics coming up to my door on an emergency situation looking to point fingers before he'd stop and think that maybe what I have to say is true. He didn't have to jump on that bandwagon. Well, the mother wasn't well, he didn't say addict. He said, well, the mother did drugs. I said, that's besides the point. Right? You didn't listen to what I said to you. So, I'm like having a standoff. Right? As if that's professional, people. Because it makes me angry. Because the government's got me by the balls, people. I don't know how to fight for that private care for my grandson. Because I can't afford to go get a lawyer to take the government to court for the injury of my grandson. Because everybody's too busy blaming the mother that had her body pillaged for illegal organ harvesting. And they're still trying to cover up that fact. So before they acknowledge what happened to Amari, they're going to use every trick in the book to discredit Shemaine, so that it never gets close to the truth as to what happened to Amari. And now we know he has seizures. What triggered the seizure? I don't know, people. They're doing a meningitis test on him. They're doing, I don't know if it's an MRI or a cat. Hold on a minute. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to go to the hospital because That was Tisha. She was saying that they going to keep him for 48 hours to make sure that he doesn't start having seizures again, because they have IVs in him, so that if he starts having a seizure again, they can give him the medicine right away to stop it, because we don't know how long he was having a seizure for. And from the time I called the paramedics to the time they got it under control, it was 30 minutes, which is the maximum, to where, I don't know, people. I just don't know. Because when I put him to bed, he was fine. He was alert. Like I said, I changed him, gave him a bit of juice. I made sure he burped, right? I told him that when we started our day, he was going to go on the toilet, and I was going to grind up some strawberries, and I have a little bit of the bran in the fridge for him, and mix the strawberries with the bran, and sit with him on the toilet like I've been doing, right? Just whatever, people. I was going to maybe try and use a suppository again this morning. I didn't want to put it in at 6:30 in the morning, right? I was going to put it in first. I was going to put him on the toilet and see, because, you know, he's having little poo stains, right? So I was going to try him on the toilet first, right? Give him strawberries, a little bit of bran, and some milk. And then if that didn't work, I was going to try the suppository. But it didn't happen like that, people. So now they want to keep him for the 48 hours to monitor him and to catch any seizures before they start. Atisha can't stay there for any length of time because she's nursing the baby. She says, if I stay, Kyrie's going to get weaned right away. And I said, that's not happening. And besides, he would do better with me anyway, right? And I already miss him, people. He's not in the house. And I don't feel like he's safe, even though I know he's in a hospital. And I resent my government for putting my family through this, people. I shouldn't be having a pissy contest with some freaking random freaking paramedic. Knowing what I know into how seedy some of these individuals can be. Okay? So it needs to be determined in a court of law whether my grandson was injured at birth from a botched C-section, or if he was injured at 1.5, at 5 weeks into the pregnancy, because Shmaine went off and did something like 3/4 of this, half of the population on the whole freaking planet. It's too convenient for these healthcare workers in the city of Surrey to point fingers at women for the things that go on in the hospital itself when it comes to malpractice and purposeful injury to individuals, whether they're newborns or dead human beings. The more they can steer away from what they did to Shimei's body for those 9 days after they embalmed it and lied to the family and make her look bad, I guess the safer they feel that they won't get caught. And they'll use anything by any means necessary so that they don't have to be held to account. And Amari just happens to be one of those situations because he was injured at birth. Now, whether it was done purposely, I don't know, people. Because the doctor that apparently delivered him is supposed to be one of the main doctors, from my understanding. I'm going to double check on that. But she runs the pediatrician ward when it comes to that kind of stuff. I do believe Amari was targeted. I do, people. They needed another child with severe cerebral palsy for their research studies. And Shimei was a poor, disenfranchised, targeted individual. And the healthcare system and the staff at the Surrey Memorial Hospital had every reason to retaliate against her because of what they did to Uncle John. And the more they can derail the family as a whole, through maiming, injuring, harming, well, we know how that money laundering goes down the pipeline, right? None of that helps Amari. But what would help Amari is if the government investigates into medical files, in terms of Shimei's medical files, Amari's medical files, Sierra's medical files, Uncle John's medical files, and start connecting the dots and hold their employees to account. Prove to me that Amari's injuries are a result of drugs, when the only drugs that came to the surface were the fentanyl at the time of his birth because of the C-section. And like I said, they run with it to distract away from the 5 days that she was in labor. With 4 of those days, she was turned away. Okay? Twice. Not once, but twice. And then they falsified her medical records by saying that she got no prenatal care, which is a bunch of hogwash, because she did. And there were no pregnancy complications. Because if there was, I would tell you, oh, she was bleeding, the placenta detached itself, or the baby isn't thriving, there's not enough amniotic fluid. I would tell you what those complications would have been if she would have had them, and she didn't have them, people. What she had was a botched C-section, and this is the result of it. So my heart is broken, okay? Right now. Because I'm scared. I'm completely scared. And I'm very sad. Extremely sad. And I don't know what to think in terms of anything right now. I just don't know what to think. So, I guess I'm gonna just, I don't know. I'm gonna go to the hospital. I'm just gonna stay there. I'm gonna read Uncle John's lawsuit. I'm gonna take notes. I'm gonna get ready for court. As the government tries to throw it out. Throw out everything, people, everything. They're just not throwing out Uncle John. They're throwing out everything. Okay? Including Amari. To cover up the truth. To cover up the truth, people. As I get, like I said, random freaking paramedics showing up at my door wanting to have a fucking pissing contest with me about what is truth. About what is truth. As if he knows the truth. When I seen it for myself, when it was his kind walking Shimei out the door in a hammock, and we know what was inside that hammock. There's only one reason they're going to take bodies out in a hammock, people. Because they're hiding their perfusion machines. Otherwise, they would have taken her out in a gurney. And even my own family doctor said she was dead before she was taken out of this house. But yet, he wants me to take him to court. Because he refuses to agree to letting me have her medical files from the clinic, where it would specifically say that she was sent to the prenatal clinic by the doctor from the clinic. And then it would list the prenatal clinic's address, doctors, test results, all of it, versus just sitting on a hospital medical record where it's written in there by some third-party retaliatory, let's cover the dirt tracks writer to say that Shimei had no prenatal care. Do you see how it works? Do you see how it works? Well, if that's the case, then let me have her medical files from the clinic. Let me get her medical files from the prenatal clinic. Or have they been scrubbed? And everybody else that knows that she went there are just straight up liars. And I guess the paramedic was right, even though he can't prove nothing himself. I have a better chance of proving what I say than what he has to say. And I'm not doing it other than justice for Amari. Okay? So that Amari, I don't know, people. I don't know to what degree the care is going to come to. Now we're dealing with a whole new ball of wax. A whole new ball of wax. I would never have expected this. I didn't see it coming outside of he wasn't finishing his whole bottle of milk or the juice, but I contributed that to being constipated, people. I didn't want to go yesterday because of the constipation. I didn't. I wanted to do the toilet thing throughout the day, like I've been doing every day. Try and help him to pass, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna upload this video now, people. Okay? I know what I have to do. Of course, there's people out there that don't want me to do it because they're not interested in the truth, people. They're trying to hide the truth, okay? I owe it to Amari to bring the truth out into the light. Otherwise, I don't know. He's just a target, okay? He deserves justice, people. And through justice, there will be the resources there. I don't know if we can prevent what happened, like what happened today, because it was just so random and unpredictable. Right? And just with the fact that we don't know how he's going to come out of it in terms of has his mental capacity been affected? Has his overall disposition been in terms of his happy-go-self? Has that been affected? We just don't know, people. Because I don't know how long he was doing that for. Because it never happened before. And what triggered it? Well, obviously they're trying to rule it out. Tisha was saying the doctor is trying, quote unquote, trying not to do a CAT scan. Because if he does a CAT scan, you're looking at 50 X-rays. That's a high dose of radiation, people. Not talking about an MRI. They're talking about a CAT scan. The doctor doesn't really want to do it, but right now they're testing for infections, even though he has no fever, and as far as I'm aware of, he hasn't had a fever. And he hasn't been showing symptoms of being sick. Otherwise, I wouldn't have went to the birthday party yesterday. outside of being constipated, to which all right. So the next time he's constipated, doesn't matter what's going on. Sorry, I can't go. I'm not even going to chance it, people. I'm not even going to chance it. This is what I mean by private care, because there's going to come a day when I just won't be there. For whatever reason. And I want to make sure that there will always be somebody there for him, no matter what. And I'll never be at peace until I know the truth 100%. But knowing what I know, my truth is different than what random people that I come into contact with that work within the healthcare system that might just either have an opinion, like that paramedic, or are reading files that have been altered to be misleading to steer away from the truth. Okay? Because as long as that remains, Amari will always be vulnerable. And this is where the government and the judge need to make a wrong right. And then maybe I might get some peace. Because the resources will be there for Amari. Without them being subsidized, quote unquote, through social services and free health care. To which there is no free health care. There's a high price to pay for that. Sierra is the example. Shimei is the example. And even Uncle John is the example of that. And most definitely Amari. So I'm going to end this video because we're not going to really know much for the next day or two or more. And I'm going to go to the hospital. I don't even know how well I'm going to cope with it, people. I'm so bitter. I'm so bitter. And if I say no, then it's their cue to retaliate. Because they're too busy pointing fingers at Shimei. Because they're right back at reading those altered files. Believing everything that they see. Because they know. They know, people. They know that not everything is on the up and up. They just don't want to admit it. And this hospital is notorious for shenanigans. I'm not saying that's what's happening with Amari right now, but it's not far from it. Or it wouldn't be far from it to have it just spring up. Well, it says right here in the mother's files. And I'd be, yeah, I know, I read the mother's files. But I also was there. And I know what she said. And I know what she did. And I pretty much know where she went. To which none of that is listed in those files. Because you're all trying to say she didn't even go there, when in fact she did. In terms of the prenatal clinic. It's just stupid shit, people. Stupid shit. Just a lot of stupid shit.